right, so now we have this, like, you know, pretty cool setup. So basically, I'm just going to go through some different light ratios and how I would use that with the meter. So if I take a meter reading right here, it's giving me an F2. And if I take a meter, so I can push this specific button right here. And now whenever I take a reading, it'll tell me how much under or over that is. I know the light's not on, but right now this is telling me it's about 3.5 stops under my key. So if I take a meter reading right here on the fill, this is telling me this is 4.5 stops darker than my key. So let's bring in the fill or the bounce and let's give me an even 4. So you probably need to go right, probably to the edge of the couch there. So you're actually giving me a 3.5, so a little bit too much, so a little bit half that. You can also, yeah, right around there. So if I take a look right now at the monitor, I know it's kind of hard to see. Right now that's giving me a, right now the fill side is 4 stops darker than my key. So how much darker is 4 stops? Anybody?
16 times 32.
16.
16. 16
Numbers. 16.
16. So right now my fill side, this side is 16 times brighter than my fill. So let's exaggerate that even more. So let's give me an even 3. So start coming in. I'll count you down. 3, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right there. A little less. So that's about an even 3. So how much darker is 3 stops?
8.
8. So right now my fill is 8 times darker than, so Danny, if you can just keep that island right into the middle of there. Yeah, that's perfect. Right now this is 8 times darker. Let's get an even 2. So this right now is contrast ratios, basically. So go ahead and give me an even 2. So you're at a 3 right now. So start coming in. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're probably in right now. Yeah. Let's try that. How's that looking? No, you're not in. So that, yeah, much more different feel. So right now I'm 2 stops below my key, but which is equals out to about 4 times darker, even though it looks almost even. And so you can go even further than that, but I think for this, I think we're okay. So let's go ahead and strike the bounce. And you can see how much more of a different image that looks. Much more contrasty or much more moody. So depending on what your story calls for, you can use different ratios. And if I were to further kind of tinker with the scene, we have this source, that really nice bounce coming in from back there. I might use that as maybe like a motivation as maybe a really soft hair light that's really under. But yeah.
Sorry, if you were trying to even this out, right? Like say you wanted a 1-to-1, would you add another light maybe back over here and then bounce that light into him, like bounce the light off of the backboard into, or like
You could, if you wanted equal, so if you wanted it
from here, just to have another light and then shoot through grid.
Yeah, you could do that. Usually I just like using stuff like bounces as fill, because once you start introducing additional lights in, you'll start to starts exactly spilling all over the place. So using passive bounces is my preferred method of filling in as your fill. But yeah, you could introduce another light. You could even throw a grid on it too, if you wanted to. But I usually like bounces because they're kind of much more bigger, usually softer, and then you can get much more subtle. It's a little easier to control in terms of intensity. So.
And does the same thing kind of go for the bounce? The bigger the bounce board, the larger?
Yep. The same thing goes for quality too. So even though we did, it did get softer as we brought that source in closer, but usually for fill, I don't worry about quality so much. I mainly worry about quality on my key. But yeah, it all depends on what kind of the scene and framing looks like. So I think this looks really great.
Yeah, no, that looks awesome. And it almost like it does kind of emulate daytime.
Yeah.
How I'm looking at it, it kind of seems like he's sitting contemplating something, drastic in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
That's how I eat breakfast every day.
Just like sharing that.
I believe it.
I remember chewing.
I just ate.
So what I might even do to this frame, as I'm looking at it right now, I might even add like a double, just kind of to knock off some of the sheen on this. Just to see how, if everyone looks at the frame, look at this couch right here.
You want me to grab one?
Yeah, sure. Just go ahead and grab one. We can just Hollywood it. So just as I stand right in front of this right here, and as I step out, you see how it kind of gives us that kind of sheen. That'd probably be a little distracting to me, so I'd maybe knock it down. This probably knocked it down probably about 2-ish stops. So if I just place a double kind of in front of it, let's see, where is it? Yeah, something like that.
Just where it takes.
You just kind of have to find it where it is. Yeah, that's out. Just kind of really subtle. So I'd probably do something like that.
Are you changing a little bit of the light on him too, though?
Say that again?
You're changing a little light on him.
Yeah, you'd probably be changing a little bit on him. But you can kind of angle it. You could probably, it's all about angle.
Flags have an open end on it, so you can feather it out.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and yeah, it's all about, so like 5500 being daylight, obviously, if I'm trying to mimic daylight, I'll use a 5500 source. So even if I come and actually swing out, do something like that, even though, actually, could we move that full grid just over just a little bit so it just covers the edge? So if we do something like that, I mean, I would totally buy that that's just the exterior. And that's the thing, like if you're trying to mimic daylight, it's okay for me especially when I'm using Windows, a lot of times I'll use stuff like full grid or even my 8x and I'll just kind of cover it with diffusion and blast something into it just so it appears peak white. And by doing that, it gives you a nice, really soft source for your subject. And you can kind of adjust it with the blinds as well. So to kind of give you a really kind of subtle.
Blowing out the window, or like making the window a soft source, implies that it's super bright outside.
Yeah, like it doesn't, it's a little bit ambiguous. Like a lot of times, sometimes I don't always need to see what's going on outside. Sometimes I wouldn't always want to, and especially in situations like this time, like where it's nighttime, I don't really care what's outside. I just want it to look as if it were daylight. So you can kind of use this trick to get around shooting night for day kind of exteriors or interiors.
I think also like shooting down and showing multiple windows as well that are also lit.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why,
even more.
if you can see in the background, I'll swivel this camera back over. Yeah, I'll swivel back over, and even though I did close the blinds, but that's why if I focus back over, that's why we have that bounce kind of going into that window over there, and that just looks like total just sunlight. No, so that's just a bounce. We have a 120D just bouncing into a 4x bounce.
Oh, nice.
And that's just bouncing just into there. And then I still kept the blinds a little closed, but that light is still kind of bleeding through, and it does kind of mimic daylight. And you can see too, right here, right in the curtain too, we did place another, what is it, a 120 or 300?
That was 300.
Yeah, so there is another 300. Those are blasting through those shears.
Okay.
And yeah, help when you do get to see additional windows and kind of motivate those sources too. It really helps sell the effect. So I'll open this back up. Some of that peek through, and there you go. Direction is really important, especially when you're going through windows. This one is not so much since we did cover it with diffusion. But especially back there, that bounce, we're basically mimicking the sun. So the sun would be coming from above, so angle does matter when you're shooting through windows and stuff.
But even like putting the light as low as you did.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
Questions, anyone?
Y'all good?
Can you mimic daylight using tungsten sources?
Yeah, you can. You throw CTO on tungsten sources, but then you would lose over half your intensity. So it's not something I usually like doing. If,
You said CTO.
Yeah, CTB, right?
CTB, yeah, CTB.
Just clarifying.
You throw CTB on that, but yeah, you'd lose. It's about a 50% transmission. So, if you have like if you have a 1K, your light ends up being like a 450 or 500. So I don't really like throwing CTB on tungstens, but you can if you have to.
What if you balance your camera to tungsten?
You could do that. In my experience, I feel like white, like the camera's perception of white is different depending on what white balance you're at. And you could probably explain this better than I can, but I usually like using daylight for daylight and tungsten for tungsten. I don't know. Do you have a better way of explaining that?
This is where the conversation about CRI comes into play, because tungsten sources are not very blue heavy, and sunlight is blue heavy. So when it's reflecting off of skin, which is red, when sunlight reflecting off of skin, it's full spectrum, so you see all the different hues of skin tone, and it's hard to see when you're just setting up the shot. But if you have it side by side, you can see the difference in quality, and that difference in full spectrum light and tungsten based sources and LEDs, it kind of shows up like subconsciously. You're like, that doesn't feel daylight to me because I know what daylight looks like because I'm here on Earth.
Yeah.
Like you see it every day, so it's always going to be your baseline subconsciously. Like especially for audiences who doesn't know anything about lighting, they might look at an image and it doesn't look quite right, but they don't know what it is, and that could be.
They could take them right out of the scene.
Yeah, exactly. And also that also goes into more specifics about like different camera sensors and stuff like that, and how it reacts to different color temperatures. Because, like, yes, you can change all the settings on the camera, but if it's kind of like film stock, everything is optimized for just one setting.
Yep.
That's like that looks its best, and depending on the brand and the sensor, you need to test to figure that out. And that's why, like, for you, when you're talking about like using tungsten sources for stuff that isn't sunlight and daylight balance sources for daylight, it kind of shows up in the image because of the way that sensors are calibrated.
Right.
That being said, how can we put CTOs on the?
So yeah, that's a good question. Normally, so as Jeremy said, these daylight LEDs, they're very blue heavy, so it does appear white, but I usually like, and you'll notice here, so this is a half CT, oh yeah. So I did that so I could kind of warm up that source, so it's kind of like a lower position of the sun on the sky.
Yeah.
And actually what I did here is I did, what is it, quarter on the 300 out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you can see, I get colder as we go farther into the frame. So right here in the foreground, right on the subject, this is kind of a warmer sunlight, and then the 300 going onto those shears is a little bit less warmer. It probably kind of evens out just because by the nature of the color of the shears. And then if you look at that window is just bare 5500 Kelvin, and it does look a fair bit bluer than the light that's hitting Danny. So yeah, you can play with color too. You can have a warm background and kind of a cooler foreground, or vice versa, kind of what we did here. But I did that to kind of help further separate Danny from the background. And I've mentioned this before, but I typically don't like using hair lights unless they're motivated. In this case, it would be motivated because we do have that window back there. But I usually like finding other ways of differentiating the subject from the background other than using a hair light. So in this way, I did it through color.
In what case would that be? If you have any examples of differentiating without hair light.
A lot of it has to. We'll say that again.
Color contrast.
Yeah, color contrast, lighting, or I guess luminance.
Okay.
So instead of actually giving them an actual hair light, I would actually light the background somehow. Like I did this.
Separation.
I did this a little bit ago, where I had someone framed up in the center, and then I did kind of a theater uplight, and that kind of gave them a kind of triangle behind them on the wall.
That was the Dorsey video?
Yeah, that was the Dorsey one, and then that kind of outlined them without giving them a hair light, because hair lights are kind of very subjective. So some people like them, some people don't. I like them if they're motivated, but
So for this shot specifically, if you can see Danny's key side is framed so that the key side of his face is on the darker part of the background. That creates luminance contrast. His shadow side, his fill side, and his hair outline, silhouette shows up because Rob is framing it so that his outline is where the brighter window is. So that creates luminous contrast.
Yeah, so basically we have a very dark area right here in the face, and then contrasted with the background here, which is obviously very, very exposed. So you can create contrast that way, and
Creating separation is about creating contrast.
yeah. So you can do it through color, through luminance, or through other means too. So that's basically
Texture.
yeah. Danny, what is your character thinking about?
Fighting crime.
Sounds like Nightwing season 2 confirmed.
Contemplating the entire season.
Someone give us $100,000, and we'll do Nightwing season 2.
You can crowdfund that.
Yeah.
Cool. Was that it? Anything else?
Oh, you're lucky. I did just fine at $100,000. So that's sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
Oh yeah. That's fair.
Just make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit that
Like and
notification
subscribe,
button.
buy my preset luck pack.
Make sure to hit that bell.
Join the notification squad.
Join the notification squad. Hit that bell.